Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you here with us for another episode in our Canvas series. We are doing a whole Canvas PD series this year, broken into levels that all align with our Canvas agreements. So I wanted to make sure that you got the bit.ly on the bottom right-hand side of the screen there, and it is case sensitive. So bit.ly/Canvas levels, no space and correct capitalization. So you get access to the whole slide deck, which are all of the episodes that we've covered the whole year. And it also has the videos in there as well for each one of these sessions. So my name is Carrie Coudert. I'm in the center there, joined by Chris Giles and Nicole Carter. And we are all part of the digital curriculum team. And TOSA's on special assignment and helping with Canvas implementation this year. So these are the sessions we've broken down based on our Canvas user agreement, and we created that to make sure that our district had consistency for our students in how Canvas is being utilized across all their different teachers. And so we've broken that into 3 different levels: the discovery, create, and explore. And we are actually, this is our last video for the discovery level. So we are all the way down at the bottom there, discovery. Today is episode 11, how to use events and announcements. And that is actually hot linked for you. So if you can click right onto that title, it'll take you to our slides for today. And as soon as we're done with this video, you'll notice on the bottom right-hand side of the screen that the video will be put there later. So you can go back on our previous episodes and watch all the videos for each one of the things up there. So without further ado, how we're going to structure this is we are going to talk all about how to use Canvas events and announcements. And then at the end of that portion, we will have an opportunity to ask any questions about that. So without any further ado, my friend Chris Giles is going to go ahead and get us started.
And the goal to be consistent on how our teachers are using Canvas across the school district, coming up with the Canvas agreements. One of the most challenging things that's really not spelled out exactly specific in the agreements is actually this topic, because it's kind of a really difficult topic to really say, here's how everybody should do the same thing. And the reason why is because it really comes down to, I think, how do you inform your students? If today is Monday, what are we doing today? How do I inform my students today? And how do I inform them what's coming up or what's due in the next few days? So if you think about in the physical classroom, I would have a whiteboard, and my students would walk in and would say, hey, here's our agenda. Here's what we're learning today. When I taught elementary, it was all the content. This is what we're doing in math. This is what we're doing in writing. This is what we're doing in reading. When I taught in middle school and high school, it was, here's what we're doing. But again, the agenda was not massively long, super detailed. It was more like, this is what we're working on today to kind of help me focus and keep my students track. Then the next day, if they missed something, that agenda might have been left on the whiteboard. They could see what they missed. Well, fast forward to today's teaching experience. Our teachers can put the same information in Canvas. The benefit, of course, is the students who are not here today can see, what did I miss yesterday? What did I miss the last week? I'm going away for a few days. Where's that information live? And so that's one of the reasons why it is a kind of a tough conversation to have, because one teacher might want to say, I want really detailed information, and another teacher may not. So that's one of the reasons why when we try to create the agreements, we try to create it so it's flexible, but yet consistent. So what you see in front of you is this pro and con. So that's why it's there. Yes,
and
ma'am.
I think I really want to reiterate and make sure that we're clear here on the idea that an event in the calendar is like your whiteboard in class. And there are things that I would put on my whiteboard that are pretty much like a shorthand list of what the student can expect for the day. Or maybe I'm a teacher that likes to put stuff for the week. Like, this is what we're going to do for the week. What we're often seeing right now is that a lot of teachers are using events on the calendar as like the only thing that they're creating. Usually it will have too much information. And I think that we need to remember that what goes into Canvas needs to be intentionally designed. There needs to be some form of instruction attached with assignments, and that is not necessarily something you're going to put in an event. If we really kind of think, if I'm writing with my hand on a whiteboard, I'm not going to write a huge amount of information, right? It's often going to be really shorthand. So I think if we can let that marinate, sit in our brains for a little bit and really think, okay, a calendar event, shorthand, whiteboard style information, here's what to expect in the class today or for the week, then I think that that will help cut back on some of the stuff that we're seeing currently. That can get really confusing for students, and I would love to see more consistency here, I think is what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah. And so what you see is just a real simple example. If I'm teaching specific, especially in elementary, it's a little bit different because in elementary, we gave each elementary teacher a Canvas course for each subject. And some teachers have said, ooh, in reading, I'll put the agenda on our reading course. But if I'm going to have an event or a whiteboard space for my students to see what we're doing today, this is as simple as it can be. It could just literally be, today's Monday, we're working on, and I could put this class Zoom link in. I could put in a link to what we're reading today, but I'm not putting in a ton of details because the details, the information of what my students to really ingest as far as what we're doing and how we're doing it, that can be left alone either on the assignment or on the actual task they're doing. So when we talk about an event, the difference is an assignment has a little tiny icon that looks like a little pencil. An event is more like, it looks like a calendar. And so when I go to my blank calendar, this is my blank calendar. Right now, there's nothing on it. So if I want to go ahead and create something for today, if I just click on the space, or you can click the little plus symbol at the top, either way, I can just click. And as soon as I click on some day on my calendar, a window will pop up and say, well, what do you want to create? If it's an event, I think of it like my whiteboard. I'm informing my students about what we're learning today. If there's nothing due, I just want them to know what's happening today in the class. So if it's Monday or Tuesday, what are we doing today in class? And so I always title them the same thing. I always call it either my daily agenda, or if I'm teaching a class, I might call it daily agenda lit and comp, because the reality is middle school and high school students have more than one course. And so it might be easier for them to say, oh, this is my math class because it says math agenda, or this is my science class because it says science agenda. Again, when we go back to the agreements, we didn't really want to tell teachers exactly what to write in this space, but to give them more about why you would use an event or why you would use that space. So, and I don't have to click a date because I already chose the date when I clicked on the canvas. I'm not worried about location. The most important thing though is I do need to make sure I choose the course that my students are going to see this event for. And so that's really, really important that you need to make sure that you're choosing the correct course. I'm just going to choose this one. And then where it says more options, this is where I click on more options. And this is that familiar feeling. Oh, look at, this is the rich content editor. All of this on top, bold, italics, underline, is the same in every single place in Canvas where you're going to create something. You see the exact same, it's called the rich content editor. And then this is where I can basically say my daily agenda.
Again, though, I think this is where we can get sidetracked and feel like we need to put a lot more information. So again, calendar events, whiteboard, shorthand. I mean, you definitely have the ability, because it is the rich content editor, to add color and images or whatever else. But I really would love for us to remember the importance of building in instruction and information into actual assignments and not into the calendar event.
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, and I would just keep mine simple. I might just put down my daily agenda, and then I would still use my headers. This is going to be a quick header, my objective for the lesson for the day. And then maybe if we have a task or two, just again, if you were not here in class, hey teacher, what did I miss? And so I wanted to be kind of clear as to what my students missed, but yet not so detailed that they're spending a half an hour on all of the stuff. So it is a balance between the two. And then I might write down a due date. And then I can go ahead and hit save. If you are a middle school or high school teacher, you can create it so that it's a different section for each day. But you know what, if I teach chemistry and I teach the same thing, period 1, 2, and 3, I'm just going to make one calendar event so that all of my students will see it. And so I can write down my objectives of what the course is. I can write down my 2 tasks. And if you want to have an assignment that's due, I can say the discussion is due if I want to. And I can go ahead and highlight something, and you can specifically come over here where it says course and you can link it to a discussion. So if you know you want your students to be aware of, today is Monday, I want you to know that this is what we're learning today, but your discussion that I want you to enter in on is due in a few days. I can tag specifically to that discussion, and I'll just say this is due, Friday. And so then my students have a simple agenda. I'll go ahead and hit create event. They know what they're learning today. If they missed school or they're going to be gone for a few days, that information is there. And if I want to link to something specific to draw their attention, so my students click on daily agenda, and here it is. I mean, again, I'm not writing the details, but what's my objective? What was my task? Oh, and look, due Friday is a discussion, just to let my students aware of what we're doing today. So that's really like an event. And again, there are people who use events differently. I'm a big fan of, if it's information, make it an event, make it something that the students should be aware of. I'm not a fan of a teacher who creates an assignment every single time they want to tell their students something about the course. So if you're like, hey, please don't forget to read chapter 3 by Monday. To me, that's not an assignment. That's more about my daily agenda, or that's more about what my students are learning in class. And the reason why we shy away from that is every time you create an assignment, it shows up on the to-do list for students. And so if it's just simply, hey class, don't forget to read chapter 3, that's something that shows up in the to-do list, and it kind of gets annoying after a while. As a matter of fact, it can really become noisy when you consider, is this something I have to do? Is it that I have to do, or is this my information the teacher's telling me? And then what is really due? So I just wanted to pause and just say, do we cover events? Do we feel pretty comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm wondering if Carrie can talk a little bit before we switch to announcements, if Carrie can talk a little bit to the next slide in the slide deck, because it actually came from her.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Carrie?
Yeah, happily. We were having a discussion getting ready to plan for this session and said, well, what are various teachers doing? And we are all fortunate enough to have middle school students. So we said, okay, well, let's just look at our own students' Canvas pages and see how their teachers are utilizing events. And these are screenshots from my son, and my son goes to school in Sherwood, but they're a Canvas district as well. And I just peeked into his, and the one that jumped out to me is just nicely organized was his ELA teacher, his language arts teacher. And if you'll notice, what she does there is she has an agenda item that goes the entire week. So it spans the entire week. So she puts in one event and she continues it all the way Monday through Friday. And when you click on that, so you see the picture of it down on spot number 2 there, you get the little pull up, the dialogue box there where it says this is a specific agenda. She has kind of a quick Reader's Digest summation view, right? Here is what we're going to do this week. This is the big picture for the whole week. Make sure you do it. All the details of all of the assignments are in her modules. So she has a link there. Here's where you're going to get all the stuff. And then she has what she calls her agenda, her specific agenda for the 8th through the 12th. So this is kind of like a nice aerial view of the whole thing. Here's what you need to know for the whole week. And then over on the right there, so if you click on where it says agenda, over on the right, it pulls up just a simple Google slide where she has kind of broken it out with more detail. This is what we're doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so forth and so on. And the things that are in green are actually assignments that need to be submitted within Canvas. So for my son and for me as a parent hopping in to look at what on earth is due and how is this structured, that's very simple for them to see. Big picture, whole week, and then dialed down. And she chose not to do it by an event every single day. She just has the week at a glance on a Google slide, but you certainly could do it. You'll notice that some of his other teachers do it. The math agenda is on his calendar every day. It's a different math agenda with links that he'll need for every day. But again, like Nicole said, this is not the instruction. That instruction is housed in the modules. So when you open up the modules, it's all broken out. She's got Monday and the actual instruction is there. But I thought this was a nice example. So we pulled out some screenshots just to show one possible way that an event could be used.
Well, and I think before you leave there, let's take a little closer look at your son's calendar and how busy it can be. And from this perspective too, we can very clearly see which ones are calendar events, because the icon next to it, I know it's kind of small, but the icon next to it is a calendar. Whereas things that have been created as assignments or quizzes have a different icon next to it. And then also the color variation here shows us what classes they are for him. So we need to be mindful from a student's view and perspective. What is it that they are seeing? And I think actually for this one teacher, the fact that she's doing a full week event makes it stick out. She's the only one that's doing that. Whereas, like you said, the math is coming through day by day. But if we even look to the first week of March, we can see hers very clearly spanning for the whole week. And it does make it easy for you as the student to see. I kind of feel like, if we're breaking it down, I kind of feel like, and I don't have my camera on, I apologize, but I kind of feel like even for me, her little blurb is maybe a little bit wordy, but for the most part, she has this really dialed in on communication. And like you said, really easy for your son to view, really easy for you to view as the parent. I think
one of the things that we noticed when I was in there poking around is that there are some teachers that are using assignments as an agenda. And sometimes that makes sense because there's actually something due. So on the agenda, there's an exit slip or something that's needs to be turned in, which is that did apply to some of his math. But then sometimes they're using an assignment and there's not really anything my son is supposed to turn in. So it makes me wonder why exactly that's being structured as an assignment. That seems confusing for the teacher to set it up that way. So this would help if it was created as an event.
Often I find that if a teacher is using an assignment for information, they just misunderstand the point of that. And I always go back to, again, intentional, but if the goal is to collect evidence of student work, then that's an assignment. If the goal is to inform students or let them know what's happening or what's coming up, that's more about an event or a page. You have to just be intentional with those tools. And again, in this case, the ELA teacher, the English teacher might be like, hey, we're working on this for the week. I can put a week agenda pretty comfortably. Other subject areas might be saying, you know what, we're kind of rapid firing going through content. And so I might need to tell you each day what we're doing, because each day we're doing something specific to maybe the overall goal, but they're very specific tasks. So I think the takeaway to me is being clear on how I communicate to my students is what we're doing today, when is it due, and how do I find it? And those three things never go away, because the reality is when your students come into school, what are we doing today? Miss Carrie, what are we doing today? Or Miss Carrie, I missed school. Those are the two questions that our students will ask all the time. What did I miss? What are we doing? And so give them that information consistently will help alleviate us as teachers to repeating the same answers over and over and over again.
And again, like if we come back to what you said originally, when we're face to face, we would say it's on the whiteboard. Or in class I had the day's events on the whiteboard, but then I had another whiteboard in the back corner that had the whole week's agenda.
Exactly. So, like a calendar almost.
Yes, exactly. So if a student came in and said, I missed Monday, what happened? Well, Tuesday's events are on the board now, but I can point to the back corner. So it's the same thing happening here in a virtual environment. And I would also just quickly touch on, again, we've used the word instruction often, and I think, to me, again, the biggest difference between using like a calendar event to inform a student is shorthand whiteboard style information. If it's larger than that, if it's more information than something you might shorthand write on a whiteboard, then that's where you go to a page.
Yeah, or put it where it's supposed to go.
Yeah, if there's no due date, it is just information, but it's larger than a small amount of shorthand whiteboard style stuff, then go to a page. Like there's a way for you to systematically, I think, in your brain figure out where is this information going, as long as you kind of like think a little bit ahead of time. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? In
all fairness, I think our teachers, especially newer to Canvas, are still working on thinking of this process, but the intention of creating those Canvas agreements with events, we'll talk about announcements real quickly, is to kind of help set up a framework for more consistent communication, because that's really what it comes down to is, I'm a student, where do I go to find out what I'm doing? Is it the same tomorrow? Do I go to the same place each time? And then how am I finding information out? So I do want to switch gears real quickly to what's called a Canvas announcement. And if you're not familiar with a Canvas announcement, it simply just means that you can make an announcement to your students. And you'll notice on my page, I have a recent announcement. And so I can click on announcements on the left-hand side. I'm just making my screen a little larger. On the left-hand side, I can click on announcements and I can just choose new announcement. And it's really, again, oh, wow, I'm back to the exact same window I had seen when I created a Canvas event. The bold, italics, this is the rich content editor. It's the exact same thing when I create an assignment. So that feels familiar. I'm feeling okay with that. And this is where I can just make a class announcements this week or this day. And I can say to my students what I want, and I can give them a list. You can even use bullet points. And just like Nicole said, I would be probably aware of how much information I put in this space, because if the idea is to alert your students, like a whiteboard, here's what we're learning today in class. Again, the intention is not to write a book for your students to read a book in order for what they're getting into. It's just real simple, real short, what we're learning on. And the same rules apply. I can go ahead and I can link different sections to my course if I want to. I'm allowed to do that. But I will say the beauty of announcements is that I can delay a posting. In other words, I can make an announcement 4 or 5 in a row and make it so that they post to my students on a certain day. So you could get your work done in advance. I say all this to you because on our screen over here, we're talking about the pros and cons. This is where we intentionally did not say to schools, you should use announcements or you should only use events, because we feel like a school should be more consistent in how they approach so that all the students at that school feel comfortable and consistent. The pro and con to an announcement is what you can see on the screen, which basically it alerts all of your students. That also sends a notification to them. Every single time you make an announcement as a teacher, your parents and your students are getting notified through email or text messages, which if you're doing one once a week, maybe that's okay. But if I and Carrie and Nicole are also sending announcements out every week, now all of a sudden a student is getting 4 or 5 announcements, and that parent is getting 4 or 5 announcements every single week by a email, text, and stuff. And yes, you can dial back your notifications and turn them off, but it's just an awareness. You need to know that if you're choosing announcements, you need to know what are the, I don't want to say consequences, but what are the actions that take place after announcements are created. And I love the fact that you can delay the time and you can go ahead and let an announcement live at the top of your homepage, because your students might say to you, oh my gosh, you made an announcement. What did you say? Well, I can have the announcement live right here at the very top of my homepage each time. So there are some really great pros to it, but I will tell you is that communication piece and the notification that is potentially, to me, that changes the game. I'm going to stick with calendar because it's consistent, it's quiet, but it's always going to be there. So I feel like we've covered announcements and events. We want to open it up for questions and answers. If there's something that, like, Chris, you talk too fast, which I always do. Can you go over something? I'm happy to talk about it, or happy to share anything else you want. So anybody have any questions regarding events or announcements for today?